This is the Chefpreneur Podcast, where we inspire professional cooks to take on greater risk to build a personal chef business for themselves. Now, here's your host, Andres Hinojosa.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Chefpreneur Podcast. I am your host, Andres Hinojosa. Thank you so much for tuning in again today. Appreciate you guys all listening to this podcast. I just can't say it enough how much we appreciate you guys tuning in, and it means a lot that we're able to basically provide just really valuable content that you guys can take, put into action, and build your business and help you out in that sense. Now, if you guys are avid listeners to the podcast, you guys know that we usually do a question and answer segment at the beginning of the podcast, but we're actually going to skip that for today because we have a very special guest, which I'll get to in a minute. But I just wanted to give you guys that idea that we're not going to be doing a question and answer. We will be doing it, but we have a live guest with us, and his name is Jerry Peterson, and I want to just dive right in. His name is Jerry Peterson, and he's a recent graduate of the Chefpreneur Masterclass Online Program. And I just wanted to bring him on the podcast and just share some of the experiences, not only just about him personally and his career, but also just some of the things that he's experiencing in his own business. And, basically, I just feel like it's going to help a lot of you kind of get into the mind of what it's like to really start this business and go out there and get it. So without further ado, let me just kind of bring in Jerry Peterson here to the podcast. How you doing, Jerry?
I'm doing well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being on the podcast today. I'm really excited to share kind of your story and kind of get into some of the things that we're going to talk about today that I really feel can help a lot of chefs and cooks out there, which is what we want to do here in the podcast. So the first thing I just want to kind of ask is for you to share a little bit about yourself with everyone here.
Absolutely. So I've been cooking for, 15 years. I started out catering, moved into restaurants, eventually worked for schools. And then about a year and a half ago, I started at a High Valley Ranch, which is this kind of exclusive self-help resort up in the mountains. And I was the head chef up there for a while. And I've also been working for the last 3 years with adults with disabilities. We've got a vocational program where they come in, and it's about 15 to 20 of them, and they do farming and landscaping, and then I run the culinary branch of that. And I've been pretty blessed in my career. There's a lot of burnt out cooks out there, but I've just been really fortunate to kind of find some really nice niches and work with some really awesome people. Worked on a couple of farms and vineyards, but for the most part, I've been cooking for half my life, and this has just been kind of a blessing to step out on my own and run my own business. So it's been awesome.
One of the things I wanted to ask you was, obviously, we'll talk about some of the challenges you had prior to enrolling into the Chefpreneur program and kind of being part of the movement. But let me just ask you simply, why were you looking to divert your career into being a personal chef? What do you feel like the reasons were? Just kind of share the reasoning for that with everyone.
I think like a lot of people, I've always kind of to want to have my own business. And I've always enjoyed cooking. I've always, gotten that little high you get from feeding people and making people happy. So I'd say that was probably the biggest thing. I think like a lot of chefs, I've looked into owning a restaurant or a food truck or some kind of food outlet, but there's just so much bureaucracy and red tape to get through in order to obtain those goals. And so when I started hearing about the personal chef industry, I started thinking, man, this is something I could do. I called my health department. I made sure what kind of business license I would need, what kind of certification I would need. And at least in my rural area, there wasn't a whole lot. If you're going into somebody's home and cooking for them, then there really aren't a whole lot of restrictions on how you can do that. So I just felt like this was finally a niche where I could, be one-on-one with people, cook for people, sell my services, and actually have a business that wasn't bogged down by all the, bureaucracy.
I completely agree with you. And I think, like you've probably heard on this podcast before, because I know you're an avid podcast listener. And, we really stress how little of an investment per se, money wise this takes, but also just like you said, the bureaucracy of going through hoops. It's pretty straightforward on how to get started. And now, what do you feel like? So clearly, obviously, there's not, you kind of figured out, all right, I want to be a personal chef. I think that I really want to pursue something like this. I really like that one-on-one approach. And again, there's a lot of reasons, why people kind of, transfer their career into this, into this part of the industry. But what would you say was your biggest challenge, probably that you felt when you were trying to, now that you basically had a mind that, you made up your mind saying, what, I really want to start this business. But I want you to just share what you feel your biggest challenge was, before really enrolling into the program and really before really building your business.
Absolutely. Like any other business, there's a lot of variables. And if you've never done it before, it can be kind of scary. So, like most people in this generation, I hopped on YouTube and started doing some research, and it's amazing. There's not too much information out there. So when I finally came across Chefpreneur, I was like, hey, this is a kind of a gold mine. And I probably listened to all of your podcasts and within a week or two, and then re-listened to them. And then when I realized that there was an online course and an ebook, I hemmed and hawed for a little bit because, like a lot of people, there's an investment to make, but like you say, you've got to invest in yourself. You've got to take a chance, and what you provide is kind of invaluable. It's 4 years of experience, and if you don't have that experience, then having someone to kind of guide you through that is invaluable.
No, I appreciate that. And, so just to kind of summarize, it sounds like you're saying, kind of your biggest challenges were, there wasn't a lot of information out there on how to do this. So you found out, what, I really want to pursue this. I really want to make a go at it, but there's really not a lot of people, quote unquote, to hold my hand or guide me in the direction of where I should go, right? Other than you kind of just factoring that stuff in on your own, which, like you said, there's a lot of fear in that because, again, if you don't know what you don't know, that uncertainty, it gives you a little bit of that, that objective fear inside of you. And then it sounds like as well that there was, obviously you were looking at the investment side of it, which, if I can kind of just even interject on another note of that, we've done several surveys, and I've said it before on the podcast that, and probably still to this day, that's one of the Facebook questions, that's one of the questions we asked to join the Facebook group is, what's the number one thing basically holding you back from starting this business? And a lot of people say it's money. But I think they hide more behind the money because nobody wants to spend money. Let me put it this way. Nobody, I feel like, wants to invest their money into something that they don't know, right? If they don't know what they don't know, it's really hard to feel like, oh, if you go to just to give you an example, because I really want to make, this point very clear for everyone. If you're going to, I always like to use, analogies of automobiles. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I like cars. But you go to an auto shop, and your tire's flat. You clearly know that you're going to have to invest in buying a new tire because your tire is flat. It's not rocket science, right? But if you don't know what the problem is, it's very hard to trust and be skeptical of like, well, where am I going to invest the money? Because obviously, if you know the problem, then it's a little easier to invest in the solution. And some people don't really even know where to start. Like you were saying, you're kind of like, well, I don't know who can guide me. I don't know what to do first. I don't know what to do next. And then that kind of goes hand in hand sometimes with that investment because you're trying to figure out what it is that you need to do. But if nobody's guiding you in what to do, it's a little hard for you to just say, well, I want to invest in my business. And then a lot of times people retract and even trying and even making a go at it. So how would you say that some of those challenges when you were out there searching for answers, how would you say that those things, how did it make you feel when you were searching out there and you didn't really find much out there to help you other than the Chefpreneur movement, I guess you would say?
Well, there's this abyss of information and really a lack of information. And I think if someone was really intuitive, they might be able to piece certain parts of it together and kind of get an idea. of what they were doing. And again, there's YouTube videos on everything, but what I liked about the podcasts is that there's just so much information. Every podcast touches on, a different aspect of the business. And by the time I was finished with the podcast, I think I even put on the Chefpreneur page, I was like, hey, when's the next podcast? And you were like, we're coming out with one, but check out the online course. And I was like, whoa, 10 hours of this, incredibly valuable information. So that was kind of the process I went through was, and I hate to say that I'm cheap, but I am frugal. And so it was definitely a process for me to, decide to spend that kind of money. But it's, when you look at the experience you're gleaning from it, it's not that much. And I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I was able to recuperate the cost of the class in my first service. So when you look at it in those terms, I mean,
wow.
It's a no-brainer for sure.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and I definitely want to have you share that here in a few minutes. And so it sounds to me again that you had that feeling of like, what, a lack of information is almost just as worse, just as bad as too much information, because it still leaves you confused. And I think with a lot of people, when they have confusion, again, and I think you've mentioned this to me on a personal level, even that you really wanted to do something like this, but then almost sometimes when you see a lack of information out there with something, you're almost thinking like second guessing, like, well, maybe that industry is dying, or maybe it must not be very good if there's not a lot of information on it, right?
Or maybe it doesn't exist. Exactly.
Or maybe it doesn't exist. And, here I am thinking maybe I can make a go out of this, but maybe, the people that are already in it doing it are struggling. And I find that myself as well. So I think that, you kind of touched on that point.
It's almost a chef's secret weapon, because I've been, like I said, in the industry for 15 years, and I had never heard of being a personal chef. I thought you work your way up through a kitchen and you cook in a restaurant or a hotel, or you start a restaurant and you basically live there your entire life. I mean, the fact that there's a happy median where you can, cook the food you want to cook, the way you want to cook it, make your own menus, shop for the best ingredients and serve people on an intimate basis I think it's a lot of our dreams without even really realizing it.
You know what? You're so right. And I just recently did a Chefpreneur, in the Chefpreneur movement group. I recently did a live on Facebook because I was just kind of going on a little rant as well. And we're working on, doing a free web class that we're going to be that we revised our free web class, and I've been working hard at it, and it's going to be available here pretty soon for anybody who wants to go through it. And really, I'm going to discuss a simple three-step process to basically start the business with a very little investment. But one of the things I do mention in the free web class is cutting out that middleman, right? Like I feel like a restaurant, a hotel, and all these different entities are kind of the middlemen for what we do as chefs, right? Whether, I don't even care if you're quote unquote what you consider a chef or a home cook, realistically, no matter what you do, if you're a line cook, you're getting paid a certain amount of money to produce a plate, and then that plate is being resold, which we understand. I mean, I'm not saying that restaurant businesses, restaurant owners are corrupt or anything like that. Obviously, it's a business, but I get how it works, right? They take the plate that you just put your heart into, your hard work, sweat on the line, you know what I mean? The scars, the blood, the sweat, the tears, and they take it around and they sell it to the client that never sees your face, and they're the middleman, right? That's what it is. And unfortunately, I think that in this day and age, the industry is slowly starting to taper off, that you're either going super high end. And I know that you're from the Napa Valley area, and where Thomas Keller's at and all that. So you're either in that field where you're charging $300-400 a person, and you're not turning your restaurant over 3-4 times, or you're a Chick-fil-A or a McDonald's and you're cranking things out and you're making a lot of money due to quantity and that type of thing. So it's really hard to find the middle ground. The problem is I think that not to give away too much of the free web class, but I also talk a little bit about why I think that that's the reason why the culinary industry is in turn struggling so much, because the middle ground, the mom and pop, cafe or the little bistro, they're doing covers, but they're not doing enough to feel like they're making money and keeping afloat. But the patrons, the customers that still want that product are still out there. And I feel as a personal chef, since you only need a few customers, basically, to kind of suffice and kind of survive, it allows us to kind of come into that level or into that area of the market and basically dominate it. So, and that leads me kind of to my next question is, so, you basically, you did mention already, obviously, that we've mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that you did, you did enroll in the Masterclass Online. And I wanted to ask you what you felt like, what you felt like changed, or what were some of the major takeaways that you felt, whether it's even mentally, emotionally, practically, that you got from the program that you can just share with everyone?
Absolutely. I did want to touch on, you mentioned I'm from the Napa Valley, and what you were just saying as far as the restaurant industry being a middleman was, for me, kind of revolutionary. I'd never really thought of it in that way, but it's so true. Our skills are kind of mitigated through this big machine that is the restaurant industry. And on that note, as far as the Napa Valley goes, I'm about an hour and a half north of the Napa Valley. And the only reason that really matters is because, to own any kind of restaurant and compete with Thomas Keller and the wineries down there, you're looking at multi-million-dollar endeavors. And I'm actually just over the hill in what's called Lake County, which, if you do any kind of research, is actually the poorest county in the state of California.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And the town, I'm just outside of the town. I'm in a little more rural, unincorporated area, but I'm pretty close to the poorest city in the state of California. So the idea that, I can own a business that allows me to drive an hour and a half and be serving some of, the state's richest, most sophisticated people, but keep my overhead low and be able to live in, obviously, an area that's, a much more affordable to live in, is just another huge perk, of this whole setup.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, just thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. And I didn't realize that it was the poorest city in California. And that's so awesome how you mentioned that, because like I said before, it's kind of like you're bringing the restaurant to them, right? So you don't have to challenge someone on the street. Imagine if you try to open up a restaurant, no offense, in the poorest city in California. It's probably going to be an uphill battle making money. I mean, realistically, right? I mean, unless you're a Taco Bell, McDonald's, or Burger King, you're going to struggle. And so that's great that you touched on that. I really appreciate it. And with that, also again comes with the challenges of, not to say that you have that mentality as well. I'm not saying that but there is sometimes when you live in those kind of dark, eerie places that sometimes feel like they're not thriving, there's a level of mentality that goes along with that in the community. And I remember you sharing some specifics about the program with me, but I wanted to see if you could as well just share a little bit more about some of the things that you felt has changed in your life, not necessarily just due to the program, but maybe just some enlightening things that you discovered through going through this masterclass and through this process.
Absolutely. What I love about the masterclass, again, is before the masterclass, I was kind of floating out there with a very rough idea of how I could approach this. And what the masterclass does is it basically outlines and holds your hand through the entire process. So, it's difficult for me to pick one specific thing, because it's really the process from, I would say the mindset, which is the first module, was incredibly helpful for me. I think you're right about most people that are going to fail in this are going to fail because of their own mindset. So just the way you've laid it out to get your mindset right, and then go into, the more specifics of running the business and then how to serve people. I mean, it's a whole integral process that will transform you from a kind of clueless, have a rough idea into, okay, now I know what I'm doing. I mean, I followed it to the T, and I attribute any success I've had in the very short time I've been doing this to the fact that, I took the experience from someone who has 4 years doing this and is highly successful. I applied it to myself, to my region. And, I've only really technically have launched my business for 3 weeks, and I've already done my first service. I've got 2 more in the bag. I've got a Christmas party that I'm doing next month. I mean, I've already booked somebody for June. The rate that success comes when you apply these principles it's almost scary.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And then you kind of read my mind there, because that was kind of my next question. It was just some of the results you could share. And I just wanted to kind of really touch on that because, it's funny when I started to have this, which I'm sure you've listened to my podcast about what the movement is about, why I started it, how it all came to pass. It was really because I wasn't just sitting around saying, hey, how can I deliver a program to a bunch of chefs and cooks who want to do this? It really wasn't how it started. It really was that I started getting some success. Some of the people that were in the industry around me started to see that success and started to ask me, Chef, like, what are you doing? Because I want to kind of do it. Like, can you teach me? And like I've said on a couple podcast episodes, I first started out by thinking, you know what, I'm going to have all these chefs around the United States, and maybe I can create a nice company around this. And then, basically have all these chefs employed in different cities, which is not a bad idea. But then I started thinking a little bit bigger, because as I started realizing that it was much more than just how do I expand my reach? It was more like, honestly, I think that there's a lot of people. Then I started really dissecting the industry and saying to myself, the industry is really starting to break down in different areas of it, like we just discussed. And I started realizing, man, I kind of want to help people just figure out how to do it for themselves, because that's kind of how, the old saying of like, yeah, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink. Or you could teach someone, you could give someone a fish to eat, but if you teach them how to fish, you'll feed them for a lifetime. And I started thinking about it, and I'm like, wait a minute, if I can teach people how to fish for themselves, maybe there's something, in this that we can really change the industry. And as I started really contemplating that, I started meditating on that. I started thinking to myself, man, I really do believe we can change the industry. And I'm so, I'm almost sometimes I get just as excited. And I think you can testify to this, that I'm being, real here, on the podcast as people are listening to this. I tell you all the time, there's nothing that tickles my fancy more than to hear your guys' success. Not because I'm trying to give myself a pat on the back, but because I just truly love to see all of us succeed together. And I think that's really what the movement is about. But, speaking about your first event, I want to kind of dive into that, because I think that this is something as well that's really going to help people and get them to encourage to understand that, again, we can sit here and make a full disclaimer about how, sometimes I watch these pharmaceutical commercials on TV, and it's like they're going to help me with my headache, but they're going to give me kidney infection, and then I might die. It's like, sometimes you see this stuff, and we could sit here and make a disclaimer all day about how these results are not typical and all that. But I'll be very honest with you. The results that you're going to maybe share with us today of what, how fast you found your first client, and also, what that meant for you financially, as well as, how it went. And we'll dive into that here in a minute. But realistically, on my end, to tell you, Jerry, the truth, a lot of, if not most of my students, I mean, I can't really put a percentage because it's hard to regulate that, but I'm going to say over 75 to 80% are having very similar results. It's not like it's just you're one and I picked you out of 100 that had this, this moment in your life and in your business and how it's going. This is a pretty normal thing. I mean, I just spoke with another program graduate just yesterday, Michael. Shout out to Michael in Ohio. He's going to be doing some stuff for Cleveland. He already booked another event for 10 people, and and he's charging a good amount of money. And it's basically like you're going to tell us. I mean, he's been out. He basically, I think he enrolled in the program either the day before or the day after you. And so you guys are like right there neck and neck, and he's up and running. He already has inquiries for next year. He has something on the books for January. He has something on the books for December. And a lot of the students, I can sit there and name all of them, David and Lena and, Kendra, and I could just go on and on and on. Chef Craig and Chef CJ. And But the thing is that I want you to share, because it was pretty exciting to see your we kind of started messaging on Facebook, and I kind of, was kind of, honestly, I wasn't really coaching you. I was almost reaffirming what you were telling me. It was kind of funny. Most of the time you had the answer already. I was just there to say, yeah, keep going, But I want you to share, like you said you found basically your first client within a few weeks after it. I want you to share about that. Like, tell us the nitty gritty details. I mean, share the specifics of what the event was. If you don't mind sharing, like how much you charged, how it all went down. Now, just kind of give us some of those details and kind of what you learned through the whole experience, and honestly, how it made you feel at the end of it.
Absolutely. So I think it's funny because before you start the program, you're doubting yourself. You're thinking, how am I going to find people who are going to want my services? Like that was at least my thought was, how is this even going to work? How am I going to find people that want a personal chef? And so that when you're first starting out, I think that's the scary part. And then for me, what was even scarier was when I finally found people who did want my services, and now I've got to perform. So that was kind of mind bending. So I did use Thumbtack, which again, I was kind of weary about, they charge for, I didn't have a ton of money to put up, but, they did charge for leads. And so I made the profile and I set my budget, and, before I knew it, I got a few leads. Again, being within close proximity to Napa and Sonoma, there actually are a few people who are out there looking for a personal chef. Obviously, I had 0 stars. I had been on the, profile for 2 days, and, there's people out there with 5 stars and 150, reviews and all this stuff. But interestingly enough, a few people clicked on my profile, went to my website. They, again, which I had followed to the T to the program, how I assembled my website. And then before I knew it, I had an inquiry. It was this travel agent from New York. She was sending 10 women from the East Coast out to have a bachelorette party. They were renting these gorgeous cabanas in the Carneros Resort and Spa. I mean, it was just way over my head, from what I thought I would be doing for the first time. And these 10 women, they were out all day in hot air balloons and doing wine tastings. And then, so anyways, I drove down Silverado Trail. It was gorgeous. I get there, the service, top-notch service. They come out, they greet me, they take me to these, beautiful rooms. I don't know if I mentioned it, but yeah, they had to be $2,000 or $3,000 a night rooms. Just amazing. Wow. Awesome. Little courtyard, nice little kitchen. And as far as what I learned, the nitty gritty stuff, I'd say the biggest thing I learned was when you're constructing a menu, make sure not everything is being cooked in the oven. I'd say, because I get down there and they said they had a full kitchen, and turns out it was just a half oven. So I go to put a sheet pan in there. It doesn't fit long ways. So I've got to stagger everything. And even though it's a top 5-star resort, I go to turn the oven knob, the knob breaks off. Halfway through slicing my potatoes for au gratin potatoes, the mandolin breaks, so all these little unforeseen things happen. But there's a saying floating around in the hospitality industry, and I know I'm going to butcher it, but it has something to do with when you don't notice the service, everything's going right, because it's the clients didn't notice any of those things. I pulled through. I kept it friendly. I kept a smile on. All I wanted to do was make sure the food was good and that my heart was there to serve. Again, these are principles that I kind of picked up through the program, and it went well. They gave me a 5-star rating on my Thumbtack. They, there was tears of joy. There was tears of they were all just being together for the first time. So, and it was then that I really realized that, okay, this is the service I'm providing. Mm-hmm. They get to be together, they get to hang out, they get to have fun, they get to eat some awesome food, drink some wine. and they don't have to worry about any of the stuff that I've just spent the last 8 hours doing, because it was some work, and it just ended up being a really good time. And I was super thankful that I had found, that I had found the program, and that I had kind of gotten over my fear. I mean, there was points where before they showed up that I was shaking. I was like, am I seriously doing this? And I've run 10-man teams for 150 people. I think I told you that. And I was so nervous to cook for, 10 tipsy ladies in Sonoma. So it was interesting, but you kind of just got to swallow those nerves and do what you know how to do and pull through and give the best service you can. And like you've told me, people just want to be taken care of. They just want to know that you're there to be there for them, to help them, and really to serve them to your best abilities. And there's not a whole lot more people can ask for.
That's awesome. Well, no, thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad that you were just open and honest about it. And I think, and I even remember when we talked about after the event and you were telling me some of the challenges you had, the breaking of the mandolin and the oven, thing and things like that. And, my answer to that was, if that's the worst things that happened that night, it is pretty freaking successful, because I think that sometimes we get in our own heads that way. And to be honest, the thing I want to really stress about, if you don't mind me kind of dissecting what you said, because I like to just kind of add on a couple things. Number one, even with the Thumbtack thing, I'm not against using these things. In fact, I teach it in the program to put your profile on Thumbtack, but there's a few reasons for that. But to be honest with you, and I've taught on it many, many times, and I've said it on the podcast, and I say it in the actual masterclass, and we go more in depth into it, is how to sell your services, right? We just had a podcast where we talked about, hey, you can have all these inquiries, you don't know how to close the deal. And so you were able to stand out from basically having kind of no reviews and being, quote unquote, a newbie on the platform of Thumbtack, and still being able to pull in an event, right? That's the key. With a bunch of people that are supposedly, they would have looked like the Godfather compared to you, with the 150, reviews and the 5 stars, this and all that. But here's the thing. A lot of them are not going to sometimes deliver the service that you deliver and what we teach in the program. Now I just wanted to add that on that part of it. Now, the other part of it too, is that how many of you out there listening to this podcast can relate to Jerry in his sense of where it's like, first of all, you wouldn't have the opportunity. It's going to sound funny when I say this. You wouldn't even have the opportunity of breaking your mandolin or figuring out the oven can't, hold the sheet pan that you just put the product on, unless you took all the steps before that to put yourself in a position for someone to hire you in your own business. So, the fact of the matter is how far did you actually go? Which you went the distance. You said, you know what, I'm really going to do this. I'm going to make a go out of it. I'm going to invest in this program. I'm going to start my business. And then guess what? You now have opportunities in your hand that are really like, now these challenges you're talking about are like peanuts to even get to the place that you've gotten to in your business. Most people won't even do it. And we're trying to obviously encourage as many of you guys to take the step and start your business. Whether you want our help or not here in the Chefpreneur movement, I'm just encouraging you. But you really, like I've said it many times, on the podcast, Jerry would not have been able to score a touchdown, quote unquote, book his client, serve his client, if he wasn't playing the game, if he didn't get out on the field and actually go out there, right? And so, again, if you're sitting here listening to this, I just hope it encourages you with that like, honestly, these little problems that Jerry was having, that you were having, what were they really? Are they really problems? Or are they just really more things that, they're little things that are challenges that are rising up, but it's kind of cool to say speed bumps. It's like speed bumps. But here's the thing that's cool about it. You wouldn't even have the opportunity to have speed bumps unless you were where you were at, which was in a house, kicking for clients that found you on Thumbtack with your business set up and with money in your hand, a deposit in your hand and all that, and you were making it happen. And so I just want to, first of all, just congratulate you, Jerry, on that, because you're already 95% further than almost everybody listening to this podcast right now. And that's just the honest truth. Now, the other point I want to say, not that everybody's caring about money. And if you're okay with using it, like, Obviously I want to just kind of touch, if you feel comfortable sharing, like in your current job right now, because you still have your job, obviously. So you're kind of, you're doing your business on the side per se, even though your business is up and running. It's not like it's a half up and running business. It's fully there functioning clearly. But what are if you don't mind, if that's okay, if I asked you, if you don't mind, what your average take is from your job, and what was it that you were able to pull down in one day in your business?
Absolutely. So again, I've been super blessed. I love my day job. I'm keeping my day job for now. I work Monday through Friday with adults with disabilities. It's incredibly rewarding. I get to make whatever I want. But the pay isn't the best. It's not the worst either. I know head chefs that make $15 an hour easily, and I myself,
which is sad but true.
It's true. It's as a head chef, I made $15 an hour, and again, cooked for 150 people a night, and it was kind of loony, 16-hour days. But hey, I think we all know how that is. Right now with this vocational program, at least I'm working Monday through Friday, so doing jobs on the weekends is, again, I've been incredibly lucky. Not everybody has that opportunity, but I pull in roughly $1,100 every 2 weeks, so $2,200 a month. And in this one job, it was 10 people at $50 a head. I charged extra for groceries, but I basically banked $500 in a 10-hour day. Which is far more than I ever made as, head chef cooking for 150. It's a lot more than I make at my current job at the vocational program. So, for me, it was just kind of an eye opener that, wow, if I could do this once or twice a month, I'd be adding 50% of my income on for 2 days of work. I could basically, if I desired, replace my job with 4 days a month. So
yeah,
it's crazy.
It's crazy. And I talk about that in the web class I'm designing, because the average chef salary in the United States right now is $33,000 a year, which roughly translates to, and that's chef salary. That's not even cook. That's chef. Is roughly around $654 a week. And that's before taxes, obviously. So, it's pretty dismal, unfortunately. And I know that there's people that are making more than that, obviously. And honestly, there's some people that are making less than that. So no, I just wanted to say thank you for opening up in that. And it's just amazing, the power that you possess in your own hands, which is what we say here all the time on the podcast, when you're working for yourself. And again, it's not always about the money. Obviously, you need money in this world to make things happen and pay bills and get from A to B. We all know that, obviously. It does make a lot of things in our life go around, obviously. But again, then you also have to look at those things, right? When you're doing your business and you're figuring it out, because you need to figure, how is this going to impact me financially to be able to follow my passion and do what I want to do. And I just can't stress it enough that you don't need hundreds and hundreds of clients to sometimes replace your salary or even live. You need a very minimal, like we talked about, you're that middle ground now. You're between the fast food chain restaurants and also the Thomas Kellers. You're giving amazing food, amazing service, and you're supplying that service to the customers that are looking for it, where unfortunately those restaurants are not existent as much anymore. And I think we're going to replace that pretty soon with all of us doing our own thing. So I wanted to just kind of open it up now at the end and just ask you if there was anything else you wanted to add, or if you would say to someone that they're on the fence about really making a go at starting their own business, what advice would you give them? And what would you say to them if they're saying, man, I really want to do this, but like, I don't know, they might just be, again, fearful, and they might be out there looking actively, or maybe they've listened to this podcast, or they're hearing this through, whatever means. And they're thinking to myself, that really sounds good, that I really kind of want to do that, but like, I don't know. Like, what would you say to someone who's on the fence about really starting their own business and going at this?
I'll share a little bit of my own internal dialogue, which is just just do it. Just see how it goes. Just, you got to invest in yourself. And basically, I know that might sound cliche, but it's so true. And you just got to kind of take the leap and do the darn thing. Because I'm trying to think of some words of wisdom, but that's really all there is to it.
No, and I think that you hit it right on the head. I mean, Nike made that slogan for a reason, right? Just do it. I mean, it really comes down to that. And I think the biggest way that can help you alleviate some of that uncertainty and doubt, because you're always, whenever you take a leap of faith, whenever you take a step forward, there's always a chance that you're going to slip and fall, right? But I've learned in my own life, and I think you can testify to this, Jerry, that having someone help you, be beside you, sharing the wisdom that they learned, so you don't step in the wrong holes like they did, step in the wrong traps, or let them make the mistakes and figure it out, and then learn off of them. I can't say that enough about my own life, of how much I've learned so much over the last 4 years through trial and error. It's been tough many times. We for those of you that are just tuning into the podcast or have not listened to all of the episodes, I won't get into my whole story because we're talking to Jerry today. But same thing. I had to move in with my sister with my 3 kids, and I mean, when I first started the business, before I started my personal chef business, it was dismal. I mean, it was horrible. I was losing money every day. I was working for nothing. Literally, I was working for negative. And it was embarrassing. It was mentally tough. It was depressing. I had anxiety, all this stuff. But because of all those things that I went through and all the things that I did wrong, I was able to figure out things that I did right through trial and error, through the School of Hard Knocks, which is why I like to share all that information, not only here on this podcast, but in everything that we do, our free web classes that we do, the ebook, obviously our Masterclass program. I really like to lay it all out there so that everyone here can try to not make the same mistakes that I made and learn from all of us collaborating as a community. So, I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I mentioned this to you, but I really think what you're doing with the Chefpreneur program, with the Masterclass, is, the future of education. I think in the future, so many people, to learn new skills, go to YouTube. They go to the internet. They look for people who are already doing it, and they glean information from the experts. And so I really think that, it's almost kind of going back in time to apprenticeships. That's how people used to learn new skills, and that's how they used to build careers. And it's almost like now we have this device that opens us up to a world of people who have expertise on the subjects that we want to learn about. And for people who want to become personal chefs, that's exactly what you're providing, is this kind of hand-in-hand guidance through the whole process. And again, it's incredibly valuable. So if you're on the fence about it, just do it.
Just do it. Well, I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, Jerry, for coming on the podcast and sharing and opening up to everyone. I'm really hoping it inspired all of you that are listening. And to close this podcast today, again, we're here on this podcast. We're trying to motivate, educate, inspire as many of you guys to take a stand for your personal freedom by breaking the chains of a kitchen job and building their own empire, just like Jerry did, just like I've done, just like many other of my students have done. We really truly believe here in the Chefpreneur movement that the future is yours. We want you to put it back in your own hands, not in the hands of the middleman, of the hotels and restaurants. Put it back in your own hands. And, we talked a lot about today on the podcast, the ebook. If you're interested in getting our free ebook, it's a quick, nice little 10-chapter ebook. And if you go over to becomeachefpreneur.com, you can download that. You just got to put in your name, your email, so we can know where to send it. And again, that's becomeachefpreneur.com. You also make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. All of these podcasts are uploaded as YouTube videos in our YouTube channel. So if you just go to YouTube and search Chefpreneur, you'll see our channels. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you get the notifications. So every time one of these podcasts comes up, you get notified and you can listen to all the latest podcasts. Also make sure, like we talked about, the Facebook group. It's a free Facebook group called the Chefpreneur Movement Facebook group. 100%, like I said, free to join, but you'll be with other like-minded individuals to make sure that you're on track. And you can ask questions in there. And again, I'm trying to do more Chefpreneur lives in there and Facebook lives to be able to help all of you along. And if you're interested in really taking a step today forward in your career, and you're saying, you know what, Chef, that's all great, but honestly, if you're looking to really get serious about taking yourself and putting yourself in the position that Jerry's in, and like I said, so many of our students, if you're really wanting to enroll in the program, you can do that by going to the chefpreneurprogram.com, Chefpreneur Program, that's Chef, P-R-E-N-E-U-R program.com. You'll see a big button there that you can enroll online, and we'd love to just go ahead and get you enrolled in the program and really hit the ground running to where we're going to show you step by step everything you need to start, run, and grow your personal chef business. So again, thank you guys so much again for tuning in to the podcast today. I'm just so, humbled by how many of you guys are tuning in, and I hope that we're helping you every single week and we're bringing you content that you love. So again, thank you, Jerry, for being with us today, and thank you for listening. We can't wait to talk to you guys next week, and take care.
Thank you for listening to the Chefpreneur Podcast, where we want to educate, motivate, and inspire as many chefs to become their own boss. Please subscribe to the podcast and join us every week to be part of the movement. To sign up for our free online web class, visit thechefpreneurwebinar.com.